Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to wherever you are. This is Reginald J, co-founder and president of Foundation of the World, and I am happy to welcome you to our first ever Next Level webinar with Larry Kaufman. This Next Level webinar series is designed for you, our young leaders in the community, to bring other leaders from around the world to you so that they can give you knowledge and share their experiences that can hopefully drive you along your career, whether professionally, whether in school or elsewhere. So today we have Larry Kaufman, who's a customer success executive here at Cisco. He has 30 years of process control automation and IT focus on developing solutions for clients. He's been with Cisco since April 2015 and is currently the customer success director supporting General Motors. So for those who are familiar with Fortune 50 companies, that's a pretty big one. So he's accountable for Cisco's customer success motions around adoptions and value realization. And he graduated from NJIT. So for all those young people who are here and want to be an engineer, Larry is the guy to speak to. So he's done industrial engineering and he has done postgraduate work with process control automation. So Larry loves playing pinball. So if you guys, are bold enough to challenge him, I suggest you take your crack at it. Walking, golfing. Again, if you want to take a crack in with golfing, you can take a chance at reading. So you can reach out to Larry on LinkedIn afterwards. But we have Larry on the line. So hey, Larry, how are you doing? Happy to have you here.
I'm great, Reggie. Thank you for having us, and I'm looking forward to kicking off this series and having a good time over the next hour as we go through this. I see some more people are still joining, which is great. And I ask that everybody bear with us. This is the first time we've used this platform, so we're starting to iron out some of the intricacies of it, and we're looking forward to it. If you have any questions, I presume there is a chat window, right? That
Yes, sir.
you could ask, and we'll answer them. We're up to 10, so should we kick off or should we give it another minute or two, Reggie?
Well, let's do a little bit of housekeeping and we'll let everyone come along as they do. This will be recorded, so this will go from 10 to possibly how many ever across the lifetime of this video. So we're excited about it. So on this platform, you're going to see on the right-hand side that you have the actual Q&A. Like Larry said, there is a chat button. If you pop in any questions in that chat button, us and our team will try to get to it during the call with Larry. You will also be able to see on here, while you see us and Larry right now, this is where the presentation is going to pop up. So Larry has a presentation that he's designed for you guys to help you along with this conversation. Also, we will be posting polls, and those will be on the right-hand side. You'll see those pop up. There'll be different polls where you can, engage with Larry and engage during the presentation. And there will be videos. Also, we will be sharing this presentation afterwards on foundationoftheworld.org. So please go there afterwards to check it out. And there will be a survey sent to you after this. So please, we can only make this better with your input, and that's your chance to do so. So Larry, let's hop right into it.
Awesome. I'm coming from you from New Jersey, my home office with the pandemic that is occurring right now. Cisco is working from home right now. So we're going to go right into it. I'm going over how to impress during your interviews. And interviewing is an art form. It is not a science. It is something that takes years to master, but don't be discouraged as you go along your career. Your expectations of how you interview will change over time from the people that are actually interviewing you. Okay. Our agenda, we're going to have a poll question to start off, then we're going to go through some, we've already handled the introduction on who I am, but there is a slide in the deck for your reference for the future. The 3 phases of the interview, then we'll do another poll question, have a video in between, and then some Q&A, and on we go. First poll question. Have you ever been on a formal interview? Reggie, let's get the poll up, and let's have people click on that poll on the right. And
so the poll is up. As you can see on your right-hand side, there is a poll for, have you been on a formal interview? Select yes or no to complete the poll. So what about you, Larry? Have you been on a formal interview?
I've been on about 50 formal interviews, a couple real recently, as I've been had the opportunity to interview internally at Cisco for some other positions. So you're always interviewing, you're always increasing your skill set, I would strongly suggest people go on interviews to keep those skills always at the ready, because it is, again, takes a lot of practice, and it is an art form. It is definitely not a science.
Well, it looks like
Okay.
we have everyone answering the poll. We're at 100%, so it looks like everyone has been on an interview. We'll let the poll go for another 20 seconds. We'll have the poll open for about a minute. But Larry, you say it's a science. It's not a science. It's an art. So when did you start turning into an art out of those 50 interviews?
Yeah, probably 10 years into my career, I started to nail it. The first, right out of college, it was more just trying to get through it, being nervous, not being able to take the conversation in different directions. That's where you start to mature from an interview standpoint. But again, when you're starting to enter and you're early in career, people interviewing you are not expecting you to have those skill sets, so you can develop them over time.
So our poll has ended, Larry, and we have 100% have said yes. I have been on a formal interview.
That's great. Okay. So the 3 phases of the interview process, they're real simple. Preparation, which in my humble opinion is the most important phase of the interview process. The meeting, the actual physical interview, whether it's in person or via the phone. And then there's a follow-up. And what I've just learned, Reggie, is animation doesn't work in this platform, which is fine. But if we clicked the button right now, all those gears would move and everything is real linked together. So here we are. The next poll and the last poll. What is the main purpose of a resume? To get a job, to secure an interview, an autobiography, or all of the above? So let's see what people come back with.
So I find this really interesting because I know so many people have given their definition of a resume in my lifetime. What has been the craziest resume you've ever seen through your lifetime?
The craziest resume that I've seen would be one that was on purple paper to make it stand out, different fonts. It was very interesting. I would not suggest that. I would suggest to everybody, and I know we have a future session on how to build the resume, but there's hundreds of resume books out there. Pick one, follow the book. You can't go wrong by putting what's in the book. That's what I would say. And then we have 50% have said to secure an interview, and 50 have said all of the above.
So we have about 10 more seconds on the poll. So if you haven't had a chance to pick what is the main purpose of a resume, you got about 3 more seconds.
There we go. So 50% of the people were right. The actual answer, and this is a trick question, is to secure an interview. I have not met many people, probably one in my lifetime, that have actually gotten a job with their resume. And then if you do a Google on an interview, you will see that it's not supposed to be an autobiography. It's supposed to be a quick advertisement of who you are, and it's a snapshot of your career. So that's why it's not all of the above. So again, you want to build your resume to secure the interview. The interview process is what actually gets you the job. Okay. So the preparation, a lot of research. You need to research the company. You need to research the job opportunity. You need to research the people you're interviewing with, if possible, right? And I'll go through some techniques on how to do that. You need to review your notes and your resume to be prepared to be able to talk about what's on paper. You need to prepare your questions, which is very, very vital. You need to practice your interview questions. And then the day before the interview, very important, you need to sleep well and eat a good, healthy meal. And the day of the interview, take a walk if the interview is later on in the day. You want to do that to get your brain, the blood going through your body, and your brain alert, and you physically ready for that interview. Okay? So some Tips and tricks on preparation. Researching the company. You want to look for the location, number of employees, what they do, and their organizational structure. Google Yahoo Finance with stock info for a public company. Exchange filings are all good sources to get information on the company. You do not want to ask any questions that is readily available in the public domain or in today's world, the internet. You want to do all of that research beforehand. The job opportunity, you want to understand what the job requirements are and the skills required. The job posting will be very vital for that. LinkedIn search of similar roles will give you some good information. So if you're going for an application developer role in C++, doing a job search for that on LinkedIn will give you other jobs that and what that company is looking for. And you can look at the industry also, not just the company. People you're interviewing, again, you're looking for their background and skills. You want to look for commonality. Their LinkedIn profiles, if they have one. I recently, again, went through an interview process within Cisco. I actually printed out the LinkedIn profiles of all the people I was interviewing with and had them and read them before the interview to make sure that I understood what their background was, so I did not have to ask those questions. Then you want to prepare your questions. You want to tailor the question to the person you are interviewing with. This is, again, goes to the research. Ask the questions that require the interview to place you in the role. This is a great trick. You could always ask a question, what is the job? What are some of the daily requirements of the job, right? Another way of asking that question is, if I'm fortunate enough to get this position, what would you be looking and how would you measure in the success? What you're actually doing then is putting the interviewer, having you in their mind of being in the position. It is a very, very powerful psychological method while you're interviewing. And again, you normally ask your questions at the end, so that's one of the last images you're leaving with the interviewer. Always ask 2 or 3 questions. Even if you have no questions, you must ask questions. Every interview book in the universe will tell you to ask questions. Do not ask questions about pay or benefits. That comes later, or let them ask you. You don't want to, in a normal interview settings, ask those questions. There are probably questions you want to ask, but again, get the job offer or start the negotiation for the job offer, and that's where you start to ask those questions. Try to ask questions that were topics during the interview process. If you went down on a project you did for school and the interviewer seemed interested in that, try to turn it around and ask a question that was something relevant in what you spoke about earlier. And do not ask questions that give the interviewer a reason not to hire you. This is a big Larry guideline. You never want to give a company a reason not to hire you, right? People go in normally baseline. So, you want to give them the reasons why to hire you, never give them a reason not to hire you. Okay? How are we doing? Are there any questions that popped up? We're up to 13 people.
We don't have any questions yet. We do have a lot of hellos, excitement to be here.
Good.
I see one question that I have, Larry, is you said that don't ask questions on information that you can find. Why is that such a big tip on your side?
Right, because if you ask questions that are readily available, the interviewer is thinking you didn't do the research coming into the interview, right? 30 years ago, when the information wasn't readily available, the internet wasn't there, you were able to ask those questions because it was harder to come about. But in today's interview dynamic, asking a question like that is readily available on the web about the company's background. And you can ask something specific like, what does what's your team dynamic, or what is your viewpoint on leadership and things like that, which isn't readily available on the web. But you don't want to ask a company, how many employees they have, how many locations they have, if they are a publicly traded company that has a lot of information out on the web.
No, that's good. So I hope you guys heard that. As we said, you can ask questions on the right-hand side, and we do have a speak button. So if you request to speak and ask Larry a question live, we can add you into the session so you can ask Larry your question. So Larry, we'll let you get back to it.
Okay. Now comes the interview, the meeting. I've separated this into do's and don'ts. I'm going to give you a little anecdote. I'm going to go through this. You dress for the job, professional and neat. I'm in a polo shirt, a golf shirt today. I wanted to make everybody feel relaxed, but I will never, ever go on an interview like this. It'll be a button-down shirt, tie. If I'm interviewing at home and I have this somewhere on the bottom, you always dress as you're doing an in-person interview, even if you're not on video. It's something that I've told my children. It puts you in a proper frame of mind on the job you're going for, right? So always dress to the part and to the role that you're interviewing. Always arrive early. This alleviates some nerves as you get accustomed to your surroundings. I will also tell you why to arrive early. Back in 1991, as I was graduating the NJIT, I went on in my first interview to find a job when I graduated. It was with a company, which I'm not going to mention the name, but the gentleman actually was going to perform an interview on a facility that was being built that had no readily address. There was no receptionist. I had to actually go find him, and that was actually a part of the test of the interview. If I got there right at the time for the interview, I would have been panicked to no end. Mind you, I did not accept that job offer because I did not like the games that was being played with me, but you always want to put yourself in the position to get the job offer, and then it's always your right to accept or not accept the job. So that's a frame of mind you always go into an interview with. You're there to get the job offer. That does not mean you have to take the job, right? But if you don't get the job offer, you don't have the option then to turn them down if it's a job you do not want. Okay? Always make eye contact, always a strong posture, firm handshake. I would practice your handshakes. Use the STAR method of answering questions, which is to prepare to be asked about times in the past when you use a specific skill. Always articulate the situation, the task, the action, and the results. That is what the STAR method is. I didn't make up the STAR method. I found that on the internet, but I actually like that. So I figured let me pass that on to all of you. Answer what's being asked. I've actually interviewed people where I asked one question and 45 minutes later the interview was over because the person just went on and on and on about that question. I'd answer the question concisely, completely, but don't, offer more up than what is being asked. Same thing in sales. I was in sales. You never answer a question that your client never asks. You don't answer an interview or a question that has not been asked. Ask questions, the one that you prepared and any that come to mind. Ask for the position. Show you are interested. The last thing I always do during an interview is I make sure the person I'm speaking to fully understands I want the job. And the best way to do that is to ask for it. And this is very, very hard. I'm now 50 years old, been on many, many interviews during my lifetime. This is still very uncomfortable. It does not seem natural. So there are ways to go about asking for it. I really look forward to hearing about you, and I'm excited about this job. You're not specifically saying, I want the job, but you're showing that you have interest. The reason why this is so important, if I'm interviewing 5, 6 candidates, and there are 2 or 3 people that are equal from a skill set perspective, the one that asks for the job and shows that they're most interested in it is probably the one I'm now going to take down to the next step and start negotiating for and to bring them on board. Approach an interview on the phone or video always the same way. Dress the same. Be early. This helps you relax. Don't go and sit at your desk to take the phone interview or the video call. Just before the interview, you're just seemed rushed, and that's going to start off in a bad light. And then enjoy the process. I actually, when I interview, I actually ask after the interview feedback questions on how I could do better at this process. You don't always have the opportunity to do that. When I'm interviewing internally within Cisco, I do have that opportunity because I do know the people that I'm interviewing with. But it is always, everything you do is always a development opportunity, right? I like to look at it like this. We never lose. We either win or we're learning, right? So even if you don't get the job offer, right, you could take something away from the process that is going to prepare you to get that next job offer that you want. Okay. Any questions?
So Larry, they would like to know, can you give an example of the STAR method, like answering a question with the STAR method?
Sure. I'm going to go back to when I was in school. The question could be, give me an example of where you worked in a team for a project within school, right? And the answer, I would say, would be, I had a class that was our senior project where we actually worked for the Clorox Corporation with 3 other classmates. And our task, I was an industrial engineer at the time, you needed to know that, was to come up with a solution to handle their parts inventory for their manufacturing facility in Jersey City. So we laid out a project plan, assigned different tasks, which included, I don't remember the task, this was 30 years ago, but I would say the tasks included X, Y, and Z, right? We then executed the task by having weekly meetings with the client and then internal meetings of the team to get the results done. And then the result was Clorox actually rolled this out to 7 other plants over the next 2 years using software that we developed and an inventory system and process for their plant. So that would be an example. Again, I'm trying to be relevant to be a little bit more closer to the age of the people that are joining this webinar. So I had to go back a little bit in time, but that would be an example on how to do that.
And what's really unique, that didn't take you 25 minutes to explain. That was a very direct but clear explanation of the question.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Okay. We don't have any other questions, but if we do, I will ask them.
Perfect. The interview don'ts during the meeting. Never give them a reason not to hire you. I've already told you that, right? Don't misrepresent or lie about any facts. So the first one is don't give them a reason not to hire you. The second one is don't lie or misrepresent anything about your background or any fact. That doesn't necessarily mean, and I will go out on record saying this, sometimes not telling the person you're interviewing something is not lying, right? So here's a clear example, right? You may be interviewing for a position that requires some travel. And you might be in a situation where you cannot travel right now because of work-life balance or what's going on with your family, right? You do not say that during the interview. You could ask follow-up questions on what the travel requirements will be. But I will not say that I am unwilling to travel right now, even if you are unwilling to travel. If the interviewer asks you, are you willing to travel? The answer will be, what type of travel are we talking about? Frequency, ask the question back, and then answer the question that way. But that is something that I've learned about. You will not get offered the job if you are giving the person you're interviewing with a reason not to hire you. Okay. Never, ever trash your current employer, past employers, your coworkers, your co-students, it just comes across very negative, and the interviewer is actually going to think, well, if this person's working for this company, they'll do the same thing, right? Um, Never talk or text on your smartphone during an interview. I will actually say, put away your phone as soon as you arrive at the facility and you check in with the reception. Put your phone away and do not take it out. And in the video, you're going to see your interview actually starts as soon as you enter the facility. Any person you come about may be asked to give feedback on how you interacted with them. Don't fidget and talk too fast. And then don't ask questions around background checks and drug tests or raises, holidays, and vacations until the job offer negotiation phase, right? So in the initial interview, do not ask those questions. They'll be explained to you, or you'll be able to ask them at a later time. Okay.
So we have a question around fidgeting and talking too fast. People are asking any tips or tricks you have to dealing with that. I know you spoke earlier about taking a walk. Is there any other tips that you can give to kind of deal with anxiety?
Yeah, got it. So I would sit. So I talk with my hands. You can see my hands waving. It's part of my Italian background, which is all good. So that's okay. I would not consider that fidgeting. Tapping a desk is fidgeting, right? So that is causes the interviewer not to pay attention to yourself, right? So I would just sit with your hands in your lap so you're not on the desk fidgeting, right? That would be one way to prevent fidgeting. You want your feet squarely on the floor. You don't want to be tapping them, right? If you're a little nervous, that's fine. If your leg is shaking a little bit, and then talking too fast just takes practice. You normally do like to talk fast. And I'm saying a lot, which is another no-no to do when you're interviewing, but we're a little bit more informal here.
Yeah.
So you just want to temper yourself, slow down, listen to yourself. Sometimes take a breath, right? Just nice little breath. You don't like dead silence. That's bad in any meeting, but a breath or a pause is definitely acceptable, and that'll temper your pace down.
Okay. We have another question. So they're wondering, in terms of not giving your employer a reason not to hire you, when your employer asks you about your weaknesses, how would you answer that question without giving them a reason not to hire you?
Yeah, so that is a trick question, and I actually have that on the next slide.
Oh,
so
perfect
normally
segue.
We're asked, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And another way, a more modern way people ask about what your weaknesses is, if you get the position, what will be some of the challenges transitioning into the position? That is another way to ask what some of your weaknesses are. You want to answer the question, but you want to answer it with a weakness that is not really reflective of your ability to do the job, right? So early in career, you might say you want to improve your presentation skills. Not necessarily a weakness, but early in your career, you're not expected to be an expert at presentation. That would be you being honest that you want to improve in that area, and will not necessarily give the interviewer a reason not to hire you. Okay. Another weakness would be, if you talk too fast and you thought you talked too fast in the interview, you could turn that around. You say you are aggressive. You want to dive in. You could be impatient, right? Again, somebody early in career, impatience is expected and accepted, right? But if you identify that as a weakness and something you want to work on, you're actually changing your weakness into a positive. Reggie, how have you answered that question? Because you're a little bit younger than I am, just a little bit. How have you answered that question during your career?
For me, whenever I'm in an interview and I'm asked a question about weaknesses or areas of improvement, I always tell people it's an opportunity for me to grow. I have an area that I can improve upon. These are areas where I'm not as strong in, and I'm looking at this opportunity as a launching platform for me to grow in those specific areas. So I always turn the question around as a growth opportunity. And I always reference how this specific interview or this specific company can be the key in helping me grow in those areas. So like you said, you either win or you learn. So I never let them think that it's a weakness per se. I acknowledge that it's not an area of strength. I never use the word weakness. I never use the word, I always use the word opportunity, area of opportunity, area of growth. And those are positive words that give the interviewer an indicator that this is a person that's looking towards growing with me at my company, which is always important on an interview.
Yep. That's an awesome answer, Reggie. Now I'm going to be totally transparent. The good news is, as you get more mature in your career, they stop asking you that question. I haven't actually been asked the "what is your weakness" question in many, many years, which is a good thing. But that was a perfect answer. Using an area of growth and turning it around, and you always want to improve yourself, will show you in a very good light to the person that you're interviewing. The first question that most early in career people are asked is, tell me about yourself. It is an open-ended question, and the reason why interviewers love asking that question is it could go in any direction. So this is your elevator pitch, right? You probably have a good 5 minutes to go through your resume and your background and sell yourself to the person you're interviewing on why you. It is a great question for the person conducting the interview and also the person, I think, that is actually the interviewer or the interviewee, because it is such a powerful question that you can prepare what your answer is. You don't have to worry about a specific question. It's a good icebreaker. Wonderful question. Okay. Another early in career question that is asked, give me an example of or a situation in which, and that could be anything, right? Tell me about this class or internship job I see on your resume. What are your long-term career goals, or where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? That question I would Google. There are specific answers out there. How I would answer that question in an earlier year is continuing my growth, learning skills in the area that I'm actually going for the job in, etc. You do not want to say you want to be in the interviewer's chair or have that person's job. When you get a little older in your career, you may actually do that, but early in career, you don't want to do that. Why are you interested in this role? Again, that is a interesting question because the interviewer is looking for reasons not to hire you, not necessarily reasons to hire you on that question. What do you know about our company? Again, they want to make sure that you were prepared. What classwork has prepared you for this role? Again, early in career, probably don't have a lot of experience, so they're looking for your education to understand how you would fit into the role. How would you assess your written and communication skills? Why did you choose the major that you did? What are some of your favorite or least favorite classes and why? Again, trying to understand how you think. What activities do you do outside of work or school? Again, this is an interesting question. You spend more time with your coworkers than you do with your family in a job situation, right? When you take into account that you sleep for 8-9 hours a day, you're at work a good portion of your week with your coworkers. So they're looking for what interests you, and are you a fit for the team and the company, right? How would your past professors or managers describe you? Give me an example of a time when you worked as a team. What was your role? That was the question I actually answered when I went back to my Clorox days as an industrial engineer. Describe a situation in which someone critiqued your work. How did you respond? This question is very, very simple. They want to make sure that you could take people critiquing you and trying to improve you, right? Somebody that does not take criticism well is probably not a good team player and probably is going to be frowned upon from an interviewer standpoint. Give me an example of a time in which you handled a looming deadline. So those are some sample early in career interview questions. Any questions out there, Reggie?
So there's a question on how can I practice interviewing with some of those questions? Like, what can I do to get prepared to answer those questions well?
Okay, so a couple things. First one, which is not that easy, is to go on a lot of interviews and don't get discouraged, right? Going on interviews will actually prepare you for those questions. If you have a mentor, or if you are going to a university, right, go down to career services and they would probably do mock interviews with you, and help you prepare that way. Ask a friend or a colleague that has gone on interviews to interview you and ask these questions so you can practice them. Ask family members that are some career experience to do the same. There are many different ways. It is very, very hard to practice. People do not like practicing, especially difficult topics, but that's how I would handle that.
All right. Okay. We don't have any other questions. That was the one question we have for that slide. So back to you.
I'm going to show you a 5-minute video on a interview that's going to go over a lot of the topics that we just discussed. So I'm going to put myself on mute. I'm going to play the video.
Arguably the most crucial part of the job search, an interview can make or break an opportunity. So to help you really prepare, we're going to dissect and analyze an entire interview from start to finish. I'll be sprinkling in a mix of tips about body language, etiquette, and how to answer common questions. Like, when exactly does the interview start? How do you deal with nerves? And how soon can you follow up? For years, athletes have used science and data analysis to improve. Now, we are doing the same for job seekers everywhere. This is job science. Meet Anya, a recent grad majoring in business administration. She's interviewing for an entry-level project management position. Note her posture. Head up, shoulders pulled back, no slouching, and no laid backness. The interview begins the minute you walk into the building. Anya treats everyone in the office with respect while keeping eye contact. From security personnel to receptionists, anyone you run into on your way in could be asked to give feedback on you. It's normal to be nervous. When nerves kick in, the natural human response is to take short breaths and breathe faster. Stay calm by taking a deep breath before entering. Hold it, count to 3, and then slowly breathe out. Pause. First, ace those introductions. Greet everyone in a way that is authentic to you, like, "Hey, nice to meet you," and then say their name. That one always works. You know, you're more likely to remember their name if you say it out loud when you first meet. A lot of the time, small talk comes up before any questions. It's good to have a few current events or topics in mind. You can't possibly predict what they're gonna ask, but you can practice answering the common ones, like, why do you wanna work here? What makes you unique? Let's see what our interviewer asks.
So I want to hear more. Tell me a little about your experience and what you'd bring to this role.
Pause. When this is asked, they're looking to learn what makes you stand out. Be honest with your answers. That means having to pause and think for a second. That is all right. Think about your past experiences and how the role lines up with your future goals. It never hurts to be honest.
Great question. Ever since I was young, I've always been the organized one in my family. Whether it was helping my parents schedule vacations or color coordinating my closet. Naturally, that lifestyle got me here, project management. I've been a people person for as long as I can remember. Plain and simple, I love team building and making sure everyone has a part. Just the other month.
Ooh, just really quick, don't speak negatively about previous places you've worked. Instead, talk about what you've learned.
I helped lead a team of 5 to deliver a 3-week sales project a few days ahead of schedule. I'd love to bring these things here.
Perfect. A response like this not only answers the question, but also shows off her personality. But remember, there's no one right way to interview and answer questions. Be yourself and let your personality shine. Be aware of your movements. Practice polite, confident body language. Subtly miming your interviewer's posture can actually create a sense of connection. Of all places, unnecessary movements are hard to ignore in an interview. Whether it's tapping your fingers or bouncing your leg, be aware and stay present.
Hey, it's been great chatting so far. I guess my last question is, do you have any questions for me?
Ooh, this is a hot one. Make sure to have a short list of questions for your employer in your back pocket. Ask the questions you would if you got the job. If tomorrow was your first day, what would you want to know from the manager? Even if you don't have any burning questions, asking a few shows that you did your homework and that you really care. Some include, what do you like best about working here? What are some mistakes people have made in this position? What is a goal you're currently working toward? How will my performance be evaluated?
Well, I did read that you're expanding your sophomore team next quarter. I'm curious how you plan to carry that out.
The interview isn't actually over. Always follow up within 24 hours with a thank you email to the hiring manager. This can be a quick note simply thanking them for their time, or a longer one that elaborates on some of the things you talked about. It's key to leaving a lasting impression. This was the breakdown of an interview. Till next time.
That was the video. Can everybody hear me again? Let's make sure this is still working.
Yes, we can hear you. You're back online.
Awesome. Well, we'll get the presentation back up. I left off where we stopped. This is working great, Reggie. So I hope you enjoyed the video. It went through a lot of the topics that I've spoken about previously, and it just, again, I searched the web, found this video. I'm like, this is a very good video that had a little interaction and a little role play from an interview standpoint. Always try to ask people you respect their guidance. I'm going to give you a short story about my son who graduated from the University of New Haven last year and was learning how to interview. And he went on a few himself, got some offers, but not the ones that he wanted. And he asked me for some guidance. And we focused on the questions that he was asking. And I coached him to ask, and this was for an internship. I can't say where the internship was, but it was for an internship. And I coached him to ask this question. If I was fortunate enough to get this internship, how would you measure success? And the person that was interviewing him was the hiring manager and actually said she was never asked that question before. And she actually had to stop and think on, okay, with my son being in the role, what would success look like? And they actually started a discussion back and forth for 5 minutes because she didn't know how to fully answer that question. She later told him that she actually thought about that a lot since then in case she's ever asked that question again. But those are the types of questions you want to ask, right? You want to ask questions that put yourself in the role and shows the person that you're interviewing is that you care about success and, most importantly, their success. Okay. The follow-up phase. You always, just like the video stated, need to send a thank you email within 24 hours. Okay? You want to include the topics that were covered in the interview. You want to be humble but confident about your abilities. And you want to reiterate your strong alignment to what is being looked for. And you want to ask for the job again, right? Regardless of the outcome of the process, you also then want to go back, if possible, and ask for feedback on how you interviewed. I've actually included a recent sample thank you letter that I sent to some people. It's been edited slightly for this webinar on on a job that I actually interviewed for back in February, which I did not get. right? So I'm not going to go through this, but you could just see, you start off with a thank you, you go over some of the topics you discussed, etc. So that's also an art form. Now, what was interesting, the video said it was the job science. I purposely picked that video and started off this process stating that this is an art form, right? We always try to take science on how we do any task or process in the universe. But again, as you saw the woman being interviewed, right, how she responded is definitely not a science. It is definitely an art that takes a lot of practice doing, just like presentation skills are. So, any questions on the follow-up? Because we're going to bring it on home now. Reggie, we can't hear you. You're muted, I think.
Oh, sorry about that. I was on mute. So they stated, is it smart to have a copy for follow-ups? So they want to know how can they have follow-ups just set up, because 24 hours and you do a couple of interviews, it could be hard to come up with a unique email each time.
Yeah, so what is interesting about the unique email, so that email that I showed, right, I'll go back to it. I interviewed with 4 people during this process. The email was slightly tailored for each. So I wrote one email for that job interview and then slightly tailored it based upon the conversation we had. I was able to send the email after about a half an hour, right? Each email only took a half an hour. It wasn't a laborious process for me to send out the email. So again, I tweaked it slightly to what we discussed in that interview, but the body of the email was the same for all 5 people, and that's totally acceptable.
Okay.
Was that
Let's see
helpful?
if we have any more questions. Hold on. Yes, that was very helpful. Let's see what other questions we have. Who should I send a follow-up email to? As I go through the interview process, several people contact me to set up the interview, and then the person who I interview with. Should I send an email to everyone or just the person that interviewed me?
So definitely the long email to the people that interviewed you. You can send a thank you email for the people scheduling. I normally don't do that, but if you're trying to get into a company, you might not be interviewed with the people that are scheduling, and it would probably be a nice touch to send just a thank you note for working with you on scheduling the interviews, but you don't need to go into why you're right for the position and everything else. You save that for the people that are interviewing you. The other topic, which was briefly discussed in the video, you need to treat everybody during the interview process the same. So if you run across a receptionist, you must treat that person with respect, just as if the person was the actual CEO, the chief executive officer of the company. So the people that are scheduling the interviews are very, very important, and you should then probably send a quick thank you note for their time and their support. So I actually changed my answer there, Reggie. I started out with maybe to definitely yes for their support. So we're done with my presentation. We have about 12 minutes left. So if there's no more questions, I will like to say that we have 7 more of these webinars scheduled going through the month of July. The next one next week is Digital Presence with Faith, who is an absolute fantastic speaker. She will do a much better job than I did. So that I'm actually looking forward to that webinar. I will join in for that one, and then they're scheduled out. Please tell your friends, family, anybody that would find any of these topics interesting. Please sign up. Please tell people that you know that were not able to join this webinar. Hey, you know that Larry guy wasn't that bad. He gave us some good tips and tricks on the interview process, you might want to listen to the recording. I am actually very humble and honored that Reggie asked us to provide these webinars and to help the organization get this message out and prepare young folks entering the workforce on and showing up and being comfortable to be able to interview and go through these processes professionally and well. So I'm actually very humbled to be able to participate in this. I was actually looking forward to this for the last 3 weeks since I signed up, Reggie. So thank you. And thank you for all you
That's
do.
amazing. No, much kudos to you, Larry. Like, this was a great webinar. We do have a couple more questions before we close up. So let's take the next 2 questions and then we can close up the webinar. So a question they have for you is, when you interview a young person, what is the biggest thing that you look for to hire them? Or is there a big thing you look for?
I want to be able to work with the person. It is that simple. Skills and stuff you'll learn. You don't have those coming out of school. So, I want to make sure you could learn to do the functions of the role, and that you're going to be a good team fit for the company and the organization. So normally when I interview more mature folks, I have an impression within 5 seconds of an interview, right? I normally, within the first interaction, know whether I'm going to like or dislike this person. It is scary. An early in career person, I purposely force myself to give 5 minutes before I make that initial judgment, because I understand the person could be nervous, right? And they're not used to that process. So I purposely make sure I, take the initial impression and I discount that slightly, especially if it was negative, right? Because of those factors. And then I'm just looking for fit, drive, reasons not to hire the person, right? I mean, that's big, right? It's you give me one reason not to hire you, in my mind, the interview's done, right? So I'm just looking for that reason not to hire you. If you don't give me that reason, we're going to continue on the process, right? Now that I'll start to look for reasons why I am going to hire you. So I think that's primarily what most folks look for. A good interview is not going to do a formal interview process. It's going to be a discussion. Most interviewers in the beginning, when I interview somebody specifically early in career, I'm going to spend 5 minutes going through my background, what I've done, so the person knows who they're talking with, right? And I'll go into a little bit more detail than what's on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a lot of my history on it, but not in detail, right? I normally tell people, with my career over 30 years, I know a little bit about everything, and I'm a master of nothing anymore, to be quite honest with you, when you go through my resume. And that sort of sets the mood a little bit, just to not be that formal, right? And then just play off of that. So I hope that answered your question.
No, I think that answered that question perfectly. They asked another question: where can we get more information to get better at interviews? You had recommended books. The video was amazing, but where else can we go to find different tips and tricks?
I will provide another sheet, which I haven't done yet. Give me about a week, but Reggie, you'll be able to send out to the folks that are part of this wonderful program that you have running on some other reference material if people want to do more research on how to interview.
And how can the people reach you, Larry? Is it possible for them to reach out to you or follow your career?
Absolutely. So I've given you my LinkedIn profile. Please connect with me. I will accept it. Also, I've given you my Twitter, although I don't use Twitter that much. And I have no problem, Reggie, if you want to give people my email address.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give a round of applause and a major thank you to Larry. Thank you for joining us, Larry, and providing us with wisdom about interviewing and different ways that you can navigate the interview process and make it something fun to do and something that you can grow from. So, thank you so much, Larry. Like he said, we do have 8 more webinars in this professional development webinar series. This webinar series is our first ever webinar series that we've ever made here at the Foundation of the World. And it's something for you to help you grow in your career. It is every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please join us for the next one. If you haven't registered, please do. More information will be posted on our social media on Foundation of the World. We're on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So you can search for us there. And we'll be sending out an email throughout the week. And you can also find out more about Foundation of the World at foundationoftheworld.org. On there, you can find out about our programs. You can look at videos of what we've done in the past. You can sign up for more information. And you can sign up for, guess what? The next webinar. So for those out there in the ether who are watching the webinar, thank you for joining us. For those who are watching the recording, thank you for watching. Please stay safe during these uncertain times. And we hope to see you next week for the next Foundation of the World Next Level webinar. Thanks, Larry, again. Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody.